Fantasy football. Carson Wentz would make a great sell-high trade candidate. On the most recent Fantasy Football Beat, we talked about some wide receiver situations that have suddenly become quite disconcerting. Brett Hundley's faceplant in his starting debut in place of Aaron Rodgers last week has owners of Jordy Nelson and Davante Adams in a rightful state of panic, while those in possession of Cardinals such as Larry Fitzgerald and John Brown have to be disconsolate over Carson Palmer's replacement with the awful Drew Stanton. Trevor Siemian has taken to taking down Demaryius Thomas and the Broncos offense, with Brock Osweiler waiting ominously in the wings, and Terrelle Pryor just got demoted in favor of Josh Doctson, in an offense that prefers to throw to its days and RB Chris Thompson, anyway. So folks invested in those WRs will be anxiously looking for some good news this week, but in the meantime, let's check out some players of interest, a Philly-based one in particular, at a couple of other positions. Subscribe to the Fantasy Football Beat on iTunes, Stitcher, Google Play. Carson Wentz, QB, Eagles matchup, versus 49ers, Sunday, 1 p.m. There may be no hotter name right now in fantasy football, or the real kind, for that matter, than Carson Wentz. The second-year Eagle has been stellar in his past 3 games, 2 of which were on national TV, which never hurts the old buzz factor, racking up 11 TD passes to just 2 picks, with 99 rushing yards, to boot. Start, sit advice for Week 8. Now Philadelphia welcomes in San Francisco, which happens to be allowing the second most fantasy points to QBs, making for some pretty easy pickings for Wentz. There's a chance the Eagles play it safe and keep the ball on the ground, which the hapless Niners also have trouble stopping, but assuming Wentz goes off again, he would make for a strong sell-high candidate. That's because, starting in Week 9, the Eagles get the Broncos' imposing defense, then a bye, then after the accommodating Cowboys, a string of defenses ranked in the top 9 for fewest fantasy points allowed to QBs, the Bears, Seahawks, and Rams. That takes us through Week 14, usually the first week of the fantasy playoffs, meaning that the going could get rather tough for Wentz just as the fantasy homestretch gets going. Monday's season-ending knee injury to Pro Bowl left tackle Jason Peters won't help anything, either. With a flaming of the 49ers, Wentz would bring no lack of suitors on the trade market, providing owners with what one would hope could be a good QB plus another useful asset in return. Many players drafted Wentz as their second QB, so another solid player at that position could already be on their rosters, making for an even more fruitful return for the Philly Phenom. Joe Mixon, RB, Bengals matchup, versus Colts, Sunday, 1 p.m. The Cincinnati rookie was oddly underused last week against the Steelers, and he voiced frustration on the part of not just himself, but the team's other RBs, as well. That drew a rebuke from coach Marvin Lewis, who said, "You should show maturity just like everybody else. Everybody wants to be out there all the time." The best and worst fantasy football matchups for Week 8. Things, then, could go in a couple of directions Sunday. Mixon might get the squeaky wheel treatment, which could work out nicely against an Indianapolis squad that has allowed over 170 yards to RBs in each of its past 2 games. Or Lewis might choose to make an example of the disgruntled 21-year-old, giving Jeremy Hill and Giovanni Bernard more work. Mixon owners have been waiting all season for a true breakout from him, and the Colts promise to help make that happen. First, though, Lewis and offensive coordinator Bill Lazor have to decide if they want to lean on the second-round pick, or have him learn his place. Jalen Richard and DeAndre Washington, RBs, Raiders matchup, at Bills, Sunday, 1 p.m. Marshawn Lynch is out with a suspension for this game, giving either Richard or Washington, or both, 1 week's time to shine. Or could a standout performance open the door to more playing time? The 31-year-old Lynch hasn't exactly been lighting it up, averaging 3.7 yards, with 2 TDs, on 72 carries, and Oakland may choose to stick with a hot hand, if one emerges. Richard seems the more likely of the two to take advantage of this chance, as he has looked more explosive, but Washington was the one who got an opportunity to punch it in near the goal line last week, and converted, after Lynch was tossed. Of course, the Bills have been stingy against the run, so neither may accomplish much of consequence, but they have a major chance to reshape the Raiders' backfield picture. Deshaun Watson, QB, Texans matchup, at Seahawks, Sunday, 4:05 p.m. When last seen before Houston's Week 7 bye, Watson was becoming the first rookie ever to throw 3 or more touchdown passes in 3 consecutive games, including an astonishing 5, with no interceptions, 2 weeks ago against the Chiefs. Now the Clemson product gets a major test on the road at Seattle, where a good outing would really instill confidence in his ability to handle just about anything the NFL might throw his way. It's time to trade Houston's Deshaun Watson, the number 1 QB in fantasy football. Watson has been throwing nothing but TDs Will Fuller's way, with the WR hauling in a seemingly unsustainable 5 scores on just 8 catches in his 3 games back from injury. Working in the favor of both is the expected return of left tackle Dwayne Brown, who should allow Watson more time in the pocket, not to mention more running room for Lamar Miller and D'Onta Foreman. Read more. The 5 fantasy football moves you need to make for Week 8. Fantasy Football Week 7 Top Takeaways. Dak Prescott confirms his